For those of you who have followed the orchestra for a long time or have merely been Portlanders, the name Avshalomov on the program will be a welcome reminder of the 40-year history that the orchestra spent under music director Jacob Avshalomov. However, he was not the only musician in the family. His father, Aaron Avshalomov, composer of the work we're going to hear tonight, had a long and fruitful musical career, both here in the United States as well as in China, where he spent quite a few years of his adult life. The work we're going to play today, now titled Beijing Hutungs, was written in China in the early 1930s. It was premiered there by the Shanghai Metropolitan Symphony under the baton of the composer, with the son of the composer in the percussion section. And so when we welcome Jacob Avshalomov to today's concert, we have a living link to the world premiere of the work we're about to play. So thank you for coming, Mr. A. It's nice to have you back where you belong. The word Hutungs refers to alleys and small streets that occur everywhere in China. They were specific to the Peking area at the time the piece was written. Mr. Avshalomov Sr. lived in Peking, and he took the opportunity to notate some of the many sounds he heard from street vendors and other common sounds, sights, and even smells of the city at that time. And so in order for you to have as much appreciation as possible for this really brilliant 11-minute tone poem, I'd like to introduce you to some of the themes that are occurring throughout the piece that make up the musical language of this entire piece. So we start with a sound that is unique to Mr. Avshalomov's own experience. It's the sound of the Chinese barber and his large tuning fork, which as an instrument we are unable to find in its exact nature, but we replicate it with the suspended cymbal. This is the sound that opens the piece and occurs throughout, and it's sort of a general, sets the mood as the sun begins to rise at the beginning of the day, at the opening of the piece. And then the vendors come out to sell their wares. First we have a cobbler, represented by the oboe first. And then a vendor, represented by the clarinet first. And then the florist, represented by the horn. And then a combination of violins and solo trumpet, representing somebody walking through the neighborhood asking if people have things to mend. Followed by the English horn representing the knife grinder. Then we have the combination of piccolo and E-flat clarinet representing a Chinese song on the flute. And then a popular ancient Chinese operatic air played in true Chinese fiddle style by our entire violin section. Very good. And then, yes, followed by a combination of horns and bassoons representing singing salesmen. And then we have the newspaper boy represented by trumpet and trombone. And then in the middle of the piece, after these themes have all been introduced, it comes suddenly to a halt as a giant funeral procession walks through. And it's represented both by an enormous explosion from the percussion section, which you will hear in the context of the piece, but also by the low brass of the orchestra, trombones, tuba, and horns, representing actual Chinese brass instruments that are enormous instruments played by one and carried 8 or 9 feet further ahead by 2 others. So that, of course, is accompanied by thundering of drums. And the funeral procession stops from time to time to have percussion again and higher brass instruments representing Chinese wind instruments as the funeral stops occasionally to chase off the wild spirits. Finally, the procession moves on and we go on with the day, and it built to a tremendous climax using all the themes you've heard, and then it slowly dies away as the sun sets. So I'm proud to present now the fourth performance by the Portland Youth Philharmonic. It was played once in the 50s, once in the 60s when it was also recorded by the orchestra, and finally once in the 70s, and we're happy to revive it for you today. Beijing Hutungs of Aaron Avshalomov.